We are. All right. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Secret Society. Today, I don't have my co-host. Hank is not available today. Not sure what is going on, but I do have the one and only Brandon Kroll back on for part 2 of the origins of Blackrock. Brandon, how are you, my friend?
I am well. I'm glad to be back on your show. I think a lot of folks enjoyed the last episode. I have a lot of comments under that. So I think people are very intrigued by the topic that we're unpacking today and last time.
Yeah, it's definitely, for me at least, it's a learning experience. There's some things that I'm kind of familiar with, like some things meaning like probably like less than 1% of all the things that you speak. So I'm going to be learning, I think, just as much as most of the listeners as far as that goes. But I'm excited, man, and I know that again, I know we went over a couple of slides last week, or the last time we did this, and I know Hank was here, and Hank really he goes kind of hard when it comes to the Bible, just as you do.
Yeah.
Again, me, I'm still learning things, so I know we didn't get that far as the slides go. So if you would like, you can go ahead and go over just like a brief kind of recap of what we went over for part 1, and then we will get into part 2, man.
Perfect. All right. So can you see?
I can see.
Perfect. I'll bring that up a little bit. So again, like you said, origins of Blackrock, and we're talking a little bit about the Big Bang. Again, folks, I'm going to be doing other episodes talking more in depth about this. We were just touching on it briefly because we're talking about how Mount Hermon connects with Blackrock, and let's see if I got a slide, and how it connects with the Kaaba and Mecca. It's the center of the world on the flat Earth map. It kind of looks similar to Antarctica, just a little bit. Very similar, the outline there, whether it's true, whether it's not. We were talking a little bit how my speculation is that possibly after a World War III scenario, they'll have the Anunnaki gods come back, quote unquote, be actually the angels from under the river Euphrates, and we're going to help you find your inner self-god consciousness, and we'll bring you basically to Shambhala, where it's Blackrock, a place that nobody's ever heard of before. Just a hunch, but I've kind of pieced a little bit together that they have a little bit of an outline of why they. Yeah, this is a better picture. Kind of looks similar to Antarctica, does it not?
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. And I remember we kind of went over last time the different quadrants. And of course you got the 33 right there, dead smack in the center. Imagine that.
Yep, and it's like I don't think that's a coincidence or why we all can't go to Antarctica. Like there's got to be something here. To what end? I don't know. Personally, like I said, I don't think Christians would be around for this because we wouldn't be needed. Again, we were talking about how it connects with the Saturn, rings of Saturn, and we see it in all these logos constantly with Target, Capital One, Boeing. Had a lot of incidents with Boeing, right? Universal. There's always that little ring, and it does connect with this black cube. We were talking how it connects with the Ben rock over in Egypt, similar to creating your own atom. Something like this is becoming our own gods. This is what that would tap into. We saw how the Saturn thing on Katy Perry's tattoo looks kind of like the all-seeing eye.
Yep, it does.
So
it's like
again,
it's almost like the all-seeing eye kind of mixed in with Saturn a little bit.
Yeah, or it looks very similar where it's like I can see a plausibility here. The pupil of your own eye, basically, And also it connects with the Starprint ship Enterprise with over here in Star Trek with the Saturn. It looks very similar to the disc shape of the front hub. Talked about Trump Tower with the Kaaba cube at the very top. And then we were reading a little bit about Elagabalus, Elagabalus, the emperor that was brought over, and how he used to be parading around with this little Blackrock going through the streets and performing these ceremonies, which would honor, as we had etymology, we were breaking that down as we were going back and forth, how it would honor the Baal worship from his region of the world, showing how it migrated into Rome for a little bit, connecting it a little bit to Heliogabal, which is very similar to Helios, the sun god, where we get our heliocentricism for globe Earth. So we were noticing a little bit of that, talking about the etymology, and that's kind of where we started tapering off a little bit into rabbit trails, but beneficial nevertheless. And I'm not sure if we covered this particular page before we quit. So I think we'll start here if that's all right. Any
That's
questions or pop-ups for review that you had?
no, I think that's perfect. And yeah, I think this is a nice good starting spot for this segment here.
Perfect. So, as a result of syncretism, it was not the same thing for the masses as it was for the educated classes and philosophers. The many Baals of the East, many, note that that's what they worded it as, was finally assimilated into a single deity of Sol. And like I explained before, soldier, Soldier, destined to die for Sol, the sun god. Kind of have to wonder, right? Oh yes, this is
Yes.
where I was touching on this with Just Sol Invictus, and we had what phrase always yelled at in the Crusades? Dios Volt. Kind of have to wonder, you know what I'm saying? Son of God worship, sun God worship, Constantine worship. So again, we see a little bit through their own etymology, mind you, how that started becoming counterfeit Christianity, merging son of God worship with sun God worship, which is Tammuz, Nimrodism, what have you. Spontaneously, the elements having most in common were selected with various cults. Roman paganism gradually merged with a monotheism, conceived under the general and concrete, the religious and philosophical form of monotheism of the sun. The crisis undergone by the Roman Empire in material sense was no less violent. Aurelian had followed more than 50 emperors who legally bore the title imperator. This rapid succession had rudely shaken the prestige of imperial authority. By his talented leadership, Aurelian had restored order. The last point on his program was attained of moral unity. And this he accomplished by making the cult of Deus Sol Invictus the official cult of the empire. Now, something that I find interesting with this is that while this became the official cult of the empire, aka Christianity, Catholicism, underneath we had Mithraism, which sometimes they have Mithra merging with Sol Invictus. Mithraism is kind of what you could say was the foundation of the Freemasons. And they even have tier levels, one being a Raven, one being a Leo, so on and so forth. And the Jesuit Brotherhood was what created the Freemasons, as I've explained in other shows. So I just find that interesting that you could say no, but if you buy these kind of books and you start digging, you start going, oh, okay, I see where you guys are going with this.
Yeah, there's definitely a crossover there.
Yeah.
Is what it appears to be. There's definitely similarities.
And I'm laughing because I'm reading these authors. They're going similar to them, but it's not them. I'm like, it is them because that's like the same initiation from this. And you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I chuckle, and I think if I have time, I don't know what we got left on the timeline, as it were, until end days, last days. I just chuckle because I'm like, I would rewrite this in the sense, like, pull from all this and be like, I want you to come to your conclusion, but man alive, does it not kind of make sense? Surpassing all of his expectations, the essential nature of the cult, which he led, had deliberately made abstract the left vague, was generally accepted. The Romans now considered it a truly Roman cult. The sun god Elagabalus was an Eastern, more specifically a Syrian deity, worshipped principally in Atamessa under the symbol of a black stone and with the definite rights of its own. Aurelian's Just Sol Invictus was represented on the coins struck at this time in the familiar anthropomorphic form. And I find this interesting. His official name, as used by the high priests in their title, Pontifex de Solis. like the Pope Pontifex,
Huh.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you could say no, it's the one true church, and then you look into the etymology and you're going, son.
listen here.
But
Uh-huh.
epigraphically, he was dedicated to Dios Sol Invictus. Um, Many show part of the magnificent annual procession, which you see with the logo, the chariot carrying the conical stone drawn by 4 horses. Make note of that. So closely was the emperor connected with Sol Invictus that he not only assumed his name, but he also usually presented him with a companion, Comes, the protector, conservator, in the same way as the protector, the sun god, was invincible, Invictus. Elagabalus used his epithet Invictus for himself, and thus implied he was unconquerable. He ended up being assassinated by his own Praetorian guard. Go figure. On this point, he entered great expectations. He imagined that he appealed to the imaginations of his subjects. The unconquerable sun god, Sol Invictus Elagabal, Conservator Augusti, had been made his prestige Invictus. After Elagabalus, this term remained part of the imperial title. The founding of the temples. From the foregoing, the intention of Elagabalus is quite clear. His religious credo, as it's sometimes called, can be summarized as follows: to combine all religions and make them subservient to the supremacy of Sol Invictus Elagabal. Now, question: doesn't that sound a little bit like the Whore of Babylon? In the last days, they want to unite all the world.
Yep.
Aha.
Yep.
You're telling me it
Wow.
never really changed, and the idea has still been going on for literally centuries? Yes, sir. And what does it go right back to? Baal, because everybody's saying it's going to be Nimrod coming back in the last days. At least a few theologians. I have connected that rather to his son Tammuz, which is Christ's pagan doppelganger and the inventor of the cross, or the symbol is affiliated with him. And again, they think Nimrod is reborn into his son, so they're. But anyways, I find that very interesting that this was the task of Elagabalus, this guy from the Syrian Babylon. When everybody's always telling me, well, America, it can, the Antichrist is supposed to come from Syria. It can't be America. And I'm looking at this going, are you sure about that? Right?
Yeah.
Because what do we have on our flag? What colors? We have Roman red, Egyptian white, and Babylon blue.
I actually did not know that was the actual color name, like the name of those particular colors. I always just red, white, and blue, red, white, and blue. I did not put that, never put that together.
Well, it's like you can look at the British flag, the France flag. You can look at several flags, and constantly you'll see a ton of red, white, and blue, red, white, and blue, red, white. And again, for me, sure, there's the official exoteric, what we tell the plebes, like this means rock on. Esoterically hidden means hail Satan, right?
Hmm.
So this is kind of what's the same thing with anything in our country and cultures. Is we have to understand there's the lie that they give officially, and then there's the I don't know, but in the occult, it means this. Then you find out we have 33 total of symbols on the flag, and you start scratching your head going, you know. So, the task to which the emperor had dedicated his life was consistent with the Roman tendency towards syncretism, but regarded synoptically, the path leading in his direction had to be smooth vision of the goal. He had been shown by his teachers of the theological school of Emesa and by those immediate vicinity in Syria, but his inexperience made the young man ignorant of the proper tools to achieve it. Before his arrival in Rome, everything seemed to be plain sailing. The organization of the local temples, the instructions for the local servants of Sol Invictus, Elagabal, the commands sent in advance to Rome, all seemed to justify the expectation that things would proceed smoothly. But only a few days after the teachings of Rome, blah, 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 religious revolution. So basically, I found temples when I was reading this particular book, The Cult of Sol Invictus, which is for $94 on Brill, that he was talking about basically converting a lot of temples into being very similar to universities where you were learning about this god. and that connects with Blackrock. You know what I'm saying? With the captain
Yes,
there.
absolutely,
I still
thousand
think yes,
percent.
we can learn things from a university. But you have to understand the origins of things so that you don't become blinded by what they teach you. You know.
Yes, that
Remember when
makes
I
sense.
said it was pulled by four horses, the occult chariot?
Hmm.
What is it that comes out in Revelation, or we hear the four horses of the what? The apocalypse,
Yes,
fire, water, air, earth.
all the four elements.
Yeah, I know what's all the elements ultimately do: spreading disease, the problems of the earth, the earthquakes, fire, everything getting burned up so it can be bought out.
Would
Water,
fa- would famine go into that too?
yeah, because this is what makes all of that. This is
Yep.
materialism. Ultimately, the four horsemen of the apocalypse is materialism, elementalism. Conjoined all these together, you get the Star of Remphan, aka the Star of David. As above, so below.
Okay.
Right? So you kind of go, and again, this is from their occult witchcraft page. So I'm grabbing that and I'm kind of going, a lot of the things that they describe in there sound just like what these horses would be carrying, with like air, where they're spraying us with all the stuff today.
Poisoning us with the water,
Yep.
creating these
Fake
not so
food.
random wildfires, the earthquakes,
So you,
HARP,
yeah,
DARPA.
exactly.
Okay. I'm picking up what you're putting
What
down.
they're doing with our farming and stuff like that with the earth. So you see how they're manipulating chaos with all of our basic needs by messing with the elements. That is ultimately what Tammuz and Nimrod's religion does, is saying we can become our own gods via the celestial alchemy of those fallen angels that came down on Mount Hermon. Because it says in Enoch that the angels, that for their transgressions they were locked under the river Euphrates. Revelation, we hear about these four angels being let loose from under the river Euphrates, and you have to kind of scratch your head and go, how do they get there? You see, when we eject Enoch from the whole narrative, suddenly it goes, well, how did they get there? What is there? You know what I'm saying? It's just
Hmm.
we just read it and we take it for granted, and it's just like, well, I'm sorry, but that doesn't make sense. Where are they coming from? How did they get there? I mean, is this something we never talk about from behind a pulpit? But this is something that I'm like, why? Because 666 is 6 neurons, 6 protons, 6 electrons. The root server for all computers is known as AI. A equals 1, 9 equals I. AI equals 10, X, Osiris rising. Now, what do these angels want? Because they created the Nephilim, the giants, right?
Hmm.
Enoch states that when this giant is slain or they die, they can't go to heaven because they're an abominable offspring. They can't go down to Tartarus or Sheol. So it says that your children's spirits will roam the earth for 70 generations until the time of the end. Time of the end. So how do you get a giant to have a body back? Would it be the mark of the beast where you're choosing AI convenience technology? And
And
by
then it
putting,
resurrects them in a sense,
yes,
correct? Oh
and they're
wow.
given a body reborn.
Wow.
Oh yeah, you'll be like a god, all right, but it's demonic possession. Like the Matrix, where Mr. Smith can go through anybody in the grid. That's
Yep.
what I think the mark of the beast could be potentially like, because you're demonically possessed on an international scale. You've accepted this computer chip, so that they can bounce between any server or host that they so please.
I've never thought about it like that at all, and that is
But it
wild.
makes sense
It
because
does
everybody,
make
no, it's
sense.
AI. No, it's this. No, but this is one that makes sense. And what does Mr. Elon Musk do? Starlink. Angels were known as star walkers. Just saying, they want to come back. And it's like, okay, so what did Christ do for us? He said, don't worry about those who can kill the body because your soul is protected, right? So our soul is protected, it's preserved, it goes straight to heaven. What happens in contrast? We want a body. Give us a host. Give us a vessel. What is Christ constantly doing during his ministry? He's casting demons out of a human vessel of a body. Know what I'm saying, man? And
Yep.
why do we wrestle
Yep.
against, not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities? Because, like I said, Genesis 6:4, sons of God came down, had affairs with daughters of men. Get to the new, into 1 John, I believe it's in chapter 3. Behold what manner the love of the Father that we, Christians, should be called the sons of God. Are we replacing them? Pretty wild. So when you're over here saying God doesn't care, it's like he's giving us positions on a heavenly council as long as we prove loyalty in this life. You know, like
Just saying.
right? It's like I don't want to be around for this, and we won't be, because we don't suffer God's wrath. We suffer maybe for a time man's wrath, you know, which it's just death. Where is thy sting, you know? So that being said, on his worshippers he bestowed gifts, including wide pastures, large herds, male children, and beautiful women. And like Mithra and Mithra was a chariot driving god. Mithra was also associated with the plant named Soma, whose juices often mixed with cow's milk and produced intoxication. The plant was called Avatar of Death. Huh. And was used to stimulate astral travel to allow the priests of Mithra to see beyond the veil of death. In the act of producing the drink, the plant was described as being sacrificed. Now, I'm hearing a lot of people talking these days about astral traveling, going between, able to see the arbiter of death to stimulate this astral travel. And I'm scratching my head because with Mithraism, that's very similar to the Mitra hat that the Pope wears. With Mithraism, it's the foundations of Freemasonry that we can become like our own gods with transhumanism, which is merging with computer. The empire of iron and clay, as spoken about by Daniel when he sees the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. The occult version, they want the gold, the skull. They want the golden age of Babylon to be reemerged. In contrast, what happens? It becomes an empire of iron and clay, where people are trying to do this stuff still with Mithraism, or becoming their own god, astral traveling, kundalini, call it what you will. And it ends up being a thing where if the end days were not cut short, no human flesh on the earth would survive, as Christ says. So I just found this interesting here that they're talking about this mixing of things. You know what I'm saying?
Alchemy,
Yes.
alchemical.
And again, it's talking about cattle and all this stuff and wealth, materialism. That's another aspect of Antichrist. So something that we read earlier with coins. Now Hermes, which is an equivalent of Mithra, is an equivalent of Nimrod's son Tammuz. I'm going off of all the stuff that I've studied, but Hermes is rumored to be the originator of coinage. And again, what do we hear with a lot of these, like the Empire of the Sun? King Louis XIV, 16th saw himself as the sun god emperor on Earth. Does that now sound kind of similar to what we just read about the Pope?
Absolutely.
So now we're affiliating coinage, again, materialism. If you're accepting of, I think Musk has said that AI will produce universal income for everybody. That's interesting. And he wants to help Trump with the upcoming administration with advising him on Bitcoin. Interesting. Yeah, right. A sacred stone, or Batelis, is depicted on some ancient coins. Here are some examples. A coin minted in Emesa, same place as Baal, in 253, 254 shows Batelis depicted within its temple or shrine depicted to the Syrian sun god Elagabalus. This stone originated in Emesa, Syria, but was later taken to Rome, where it was enshrined. After the death of Elagabal, the emperor, not the god that he names himself after, the stone was sent back to Syria. But I just find it interesting. We heard a little bit of it was in Rome for a time, you know. A coin minted in Seleucia, in Perea, Asia Minor, shows a sacred stone believed to represent Zeus. A coin from Byblos shows Emperor Marcinius on one side, and the other side a stone-like object inside the temple of Baal at Gebal. So Baal and Zeus are interconnective with this stone and being put on the same thing. Now, something I find interesting, what do we got on the back of our coins sometimes? We got a little, what, a monument, a shrine to
Yep,
some
the
of our
penny.
founding fathers. Yeah. And again, is that a temple in the occult's minds? Because it kind of looks like a temple, even though we tell us it's a monument. But is it not technically a temple?
I would say so. I
Yes.
absolutely would say so.
Yes. Considering our Washington, D.C. grid is mapped out like a pentagram, I would be inclined to agree with that. So, does this connect with stars? Meteorites? More meteorites. Pliny the Elder briefly relates 4 accounts of stones that fell from the sun or sky, including the well-known fall of Aegospotamia in 457 BCE. Aristotle was mentioned this fall. Pliny states that there can be no doubt that stones have frequently fallen from the atmosphere. A temple in Phoenicia. In this Roman history, Herodian tells of a large and lavish temple in Phoenicia that did not contain a statue of a god, but a huge black stone with a pointed end and round base in the shape of a cone. The Phoenicians solemnly maintained that this stone came down from Zeus.
Interesting. So in this, the temple in Phoenicia, they're saying that it was if it's the shape of a cone and pointed at the end, yeah, so it's almost like a pyramid, but
Correct.
without the walls. It's all one. Okay, okay.
And that's something interesting. It's always black and white. I've read more than enough accounts that says the original pyramids were covered in white, and at the very top it was gold. The gold was
Okay.
eventually stolen by a lot of Europeans and whatnot, but it's said, if it's true, that those pillars they go all the way down, 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 down into the earth, but we just never dug them up. You want to know why? Because the
Well,
flood cemented them. Whether it's true or not, kind of does make me scratch my head because when we watch movies like Kong versus Godzilla, The New Empire, it shows a beast coming out from the base of the pyramids.
and
And again,
so
that's on our
you
dollar bill.
okay. I see that. I see that. I can make that connection.
And again, what is stones fell from the sun or sky? And we have this little all seeing eye guy on our dollar bill. Pyramid, pi, py, right? Fire, Ra, Ray, sun god, mid, in your midst. Fire of the sun god in your midst. What's around the all seeing eye? A fire, a sun. That's on your dollar bill.
Interesting.
In what country? America. People are telling me it's Syria. I'm like, get your MSM war on terror theology out of your head because there's something here. Aphrodite of Paphos, the island of Cyprus, sanctuary of Aphrodite or Venus. Of Paphos was a center of worship for several hundreds of years. A black stone, which apparently still survives, represented the goddess. However, the stone is volcanic basalt and not a meteorite. Tacitus describes the goddess. The representation of the goddess is not in human form, but it is a circular mass with its broader at the base and rises like a turning post in the small circumference at the top. Again, it sounds like a cone and or pyramid-like structure.
Yep, same idea. Same idea. I see that.
Yes. And again, I'm taking from accounts in history, and then I'm going to be showing you how it's a little bit in the Bible as well. Livy also mentioned Cybele, which is the mother of all gods. She stems from origins of Turkey, which is where Mount Ararat was, where Nimrod, where the ark came down and Nimrod and the family started migrating into the plains of Shinar. So Livy also mentions Cybele, an equivalent of Nimrod's wife mother, because he married his own mom, which was taken to Rome from Pergamum in 204 BCE, and may still have been in Rome in the 1st century CE. They came to Pergamus the king, who received the ambassadors graciously and conducted them in Picenus into Phrygia and put into their hands a sacred stone, which the inhabitants said was the mother of the gods, bid them convey in Rome. So we see coinage and black stone suddenly having a very similar connotation here. It's wealth, it's something of value. And again, what's the colors when we're playing chess?
Black and white. Checkerboard. Just
Yes.
like the Masonic temples, the black and white checkered floors.
That's where I'm laughing when some people says, "Oh, that's that you shouldn't play this particular game because it's like any game." Somebody made an interesting point. Now, granted, he wasn't coming from a Masonic perspective. He says, but you look at most games, what is their ultimate base? Sexuality. It is taking a ball, the seed, and penetrating it through the goalpost, which is the vagina or the fallopian tubes. Just like with football. Notice how those,
the
just
two fallopian tubes being the goalpost.
Yes.
And then even soccer too, right? Soccer still does have it is enclosed, but it's still got the two goalposts. That it is enclosed, but you're trying to push that ball through it. And then basketball, you have the rectangle board in the back, you have the square in the center, and then you have the ring. And then I don't know what this has to do with anything, but if you think about the basketball net, it's woven like a diamond. There's just a bunch of diamonds. If you were to pull it down, and okay, that's interesting.
Well, and then you also have playing pool. Is trying to get the ball into one of the holes, the sockets. But what is it? What's the number one ball called? That's black and white. It's called the
8-ball.
Right, 8-ball. The 8-ball, which the 8 over the magician's head, tipped on its side on the tarot card. You know what I'm saying? So when people are telling me don't play a particular, I'm like, anything. I hate to tell you this, anything we touch on this world is probably bad. But can you use it for good and evil? It's a war. But at the same time, I'm just chuckling because we really could get down to arguing semantics as the day is long and end up being very depressed individuals.
True.
Anyway, the history of the Herodian recounts some of the stone's history. They say that the statue of the goddess fell from the sky, and the exact material of the statue is not known, nor the identity of the artist who made it. In fact, it is not certain that the statue was the work of human hands. Long ago, it fell from the sky in Phrygia, and the name of the region fell was Picenus, place of the fall, which received its name from the fall of the heavenly statue. The statue was discovered there. Livy also mentions that Cybele's black stone was also taken to Rome and Pergamum in 204 BCE and may still have been there in Rome in the 1st century. I find that interesting because, again, the place of the fall, does that have anything to do with the fall of a certain angelic group?
The Nephilim. Nephilim, yep.
And the Mithra cults, they used to meet in caves. Why? Because Mithra, Iranian sun god believers, they believed the sky was made of stone. So they're feeling some of this stone is coming from heaven. Interesting. And they also believe this is where magnets were being pulled, was the center, wherever this stone originates from. Finding that interesting, but they would chisel holes into the ceilings of caves so that they could see star constellations. And then we get Ashtoreth, and then we get the Star of Remphan. And what do we get in Jeremiah 10:2 in relation with pagan Christmas trees in that little segment of 10:1 through 5? It's talking, be not like the pagans and or heathens who look to the stars or in awe and wonder of them. Ashtaroth, Astro means star. Roth, is that like similar to like Rothschild, which means red shield? So Ashtaroth, does that mean a red star? Whenever you look up a lot of pentagrams, what color is it?
Red.
Yeah.
almost every single time. I mean,
Right.
that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Right. It's always red because when you look
Yep.
at it, like, on a floor or something like that, why? Because usually there would be blood, even though they're going to say not. Usually it was, at least back in these days. So, images or statues that fell from heaven. Athena of Athens. The geographer Pausanias mentions the legend of the goddess Athena, named that her image fell from the sky or heaven. But the most holy object is the image of Athena, which is now on the Acropolis, but then was called Pallas. It is said to have fell from heaven. I won't discuss whether this is true or not. And then, with the word diopatius, or diapates, sorry, is this phrase is used with a particular sense. The word does not specify what the object is. It could not be an image or statue or a stone such as a meteorite, but the etymology of diapates indicates that the object fell from Zeus, that is, it fell from the sky or heaven. Whatever Diophanes was in Acts 1935, it was an object of veneration housed within the temple complex of Artemis and Ephesus. In this article, I look at the other ancient texts that use the word Diophanes and texts that use the phrase which means fell from heaven and or sky. And I look at a few stones that were the objects of the veneration of the Greco-Roman world. These other texts and objects may help us understand the nature of the object. So this is in the Bible, right? And
Makes
just
you scratch your head.
yes, and just prior to this in Acts chapter 19, some people came up to him and says, well, were you baptized by John the Baptist or were you baptized in Christ? And they're like, we were baptized by John the Baptist. And he's like, okay, well, you need to be baptized in the Spirit. Why? Because now the presence of God, if you're truly committed, it's a free gift, yes, but it requires dying to self daily and sacrifice. Husbands, as Christ gave his life for the church, you guys have to put a lot into it too. But it says if you were baptized in the Holy Spirit, it's being born again. Because what's that baptism do? You go under the water, you come back up. Why? You leave your old man down here on the earth, and you would cross the firmament. Does that not make more sense as opposed to just a random? It makes no sense, right? Because the other one's a death cult baptism. And this one, yes, your old man is staying down here, but where's your spirit going now?
Up.
Right, like Christ. This is my beloved son in whom I am. But later on, in Acts chapter 19, we get this. People of Ephesus. What person is there who doesn't know that the city of the Ephesians is the temple guardian of the great Artemis? And of the image which fell down from Zeus, of her image fell from heaven, of the statue that fell from heaven, the sacred stone that fell from the sky.
We just went over this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But we get history, and then we get the Bible. That is
Yes.
literally, again, so it's not just something where you can, the Bible's just, somehow it just confirmed historically this is accurate.
Wow.
Like you said, we went over it, yes, but I'm just showing you. It's also
yeah.
Bible, so it's not just something you just go, it's junk, it's garbage, whatever you're talking about. There's
that was my point. Is like we just went over this historically, and then you bring the Bible into it, and it's literally mentioned the exact same things. They completely correlate.
Yes. And that's what I want folks to know is like I'm basically, because everything, well, what Bible do I use? What version do I use? And I always tell them, getting kind of tired of answering that because you can barely implement what's in the basic one that you do have. You're going to argue all the semantics of what they take out. What is it? It's just like try to find the basic stuff that's still there,
Yeah.
Because even though man tries to taint it, there is more than enough, as you can see, that I can show you. Like, just try to implement this. Can you even get rid of a Christmas? You know what I'm saying? Like, can we try to do a basic before we start getting onto the, we have to be perfect with whatever we're reading,
Yes.
That's just me. But so among the populace, an ill-defined belief in another life had persisted. So basically regeneration, reincarnation. But under the influence of this, in analogues, religions in this belief had become stronger and more specific. Nevertheless, the believers had only a vague idea of the joy awaiting them in the hereafter. The dogma of the cult of Sol Invictus did much to define the bliss reserved for its votaries. However, the cult of Sol Invictus Elagabalus has not survived through the centuries by a wide variety of sculptures or architectural, archaeological, reliefs, as it was the case of many, is sometimes very well preserved Mithraea or Spelia of Mithraism. The cult also failed to become the subject of passionate controversies among scholars, as was Mithraism. From the few data that can be collected on Sol Invictus Elagabalus, it appears that, in his followers, this sun god was not so much an abstract supernatural god as a supreme being incarnated in the daily presence of the solar sphere. The fact that the dogma rose in Syria was astrology was a part of daily life suggests this conclusion. The fact that the altar had to be placed in a well-defined direction and explained by the requirements of the dogma, similar to Islam, where you had to face a certain direction. This direction could not be chosen arbitrarily. It was determined by the place at which the sun rose up an equally specific day. This is entirely logical, since the deity visualized by the votaries was identified with the sun. To his followers, Sol Invictus Elagabalus was the unconquerable deity who seemed to be forced each evening to submit to the powers of darkness, with which he did battle at dark, but with each morning reappeared as the inimitable victor. This power of the conqueror extended by Sol Invictus Elagabalus to his adherents, not only to ensure their victory on the field of battle or in the daily battle of life, but also to help his worshippers triumph over the powers of evil and the bad spirits at every moment of their lives, but especially at the critical moment of death. In this way, the votaries were to be led by him who always triumphed over darkness into the eternal light.
Interesting.
And what was Lucifer known as? The angel of
Light. The light bearer.
Yes. And
Or
what
bearer of light.
right. And what's his name? Albert Pike, Freemasonry is the search for light, capital L, as you will see, leads us to the Kabbalah. Kaaba, Kabbalah, black cube, black sun, facing a certain direction. Everybody has a little bit of an element of this religion of Babel. And what are we doing with Catholicism? We're gradually merging everything to going back to one or coexist. Universalism, cathode. Look up the root word for that. It connects with moon worship.
Is that what? I feel like I knew this, but at this moment I don't. The coexist stickers that you might see on the back of a car at times. That's kind of where we're going, right? Like
Correct.
Not where we're going, but that's what we're talking about right now.
Yes. Or
okay.
Being tolerant of everybody because, after a World War III scenario, there's so much devastation. We just want peace.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Thessalonians that when men are calling for peace and tranquility, peace and security. Sorry, peace and safety, whatever. So I just find it interesting. There's a little bit of elements in all of this already. So is it possible to find a way to make them all coexist together, as you just stated? I don't know, because there's elements already in all of them,
Very true.
So, what was Ashtoreth the god of? Ashtoreth. Ashtoreth is where we get Ishtar from. Queen of Heaven. What is that? That's the name for, what is it? Virgin Mary?
Yeah,
yeah. A lot of Catholics won't open up your Bible. Jeremiah 44. Ashtoreth, the goddess of war and sexual love, so many qualities with her sister Anath, who may have been seen as the original deity, seen as one single deity. That's what I'm always telling folks, is that I think a lot of it, so when we get the hermaphrodite, this could be part Nimrod's son Tammuz, this could be part his mom, this could be part this could be... So there's a lot of Babel-esque translation of the story. It's kind of like playing deity telephone. After Babel, you whisper in somebody else's ear, and then they hear what they think they heard, and then they create the tradition and still trying to maintain this rebellious streak of celebration against God. and the best that they can do with their cultures as they start migrating off of Babel.
That's a beautiful analogy, by the way.
Well, I've been working on it for ages. Thank you.
Beautiful.
But you can see it. So now when I'm watching, like I was watching an old show, and I had to pause it because I was so enthralled by just looking at the staff sigil thing that they were carrying for Rome. I was like, I know what that means. I know what that means. Oh, wow, that's what that means. And I'm thinking how it all traced back to Babel at some point or another, you know?
Interesting.
Great.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. I'm taking all this in, so forgive me if I don't have a whole lot
No,
to say, but this is a
all
lot
good.
of information and you're doing a great job.
Appreciate it. But again, you could look up sigil of Ashtoreth. You will find the pentagram. You could do Amazon, do a Google, do Etsy. That's what I'm saying. Don't take my word for it. You could put it in. So this would mean Nimrod's wife mother was the first witch in the Bible. So what was Ashtoreth, his backstory? According to Judaic lore, and I say that because it's a tree religion, YEW, look that up. He was a high-ranking angel, either one of the seraphim or the prince of the thrones, prior to his fall. Ashtoreth, the Grand Duke, or the treasurer, coinage, of hell, and commands 40 legions of demons. Ashtoreth also features an archdemon associated with the Kaflaf, according to later Kabbalistic texts. I find that interesting that he's also affiliated with time travel or time. And I'm finding it interesting because Back to the Future was based on Nimrod's family. My mom's attracted to me. Nimrod did his own mother.
Okay, I see where you're going with that. Okay.
You know, you kind of have to. So second one goes into 9/11, and as I've explained, that connects with Trump. The Black Stone of Cybele. Some suggest that did I already do this one? Yeah, we can skip that. But again, talking about the same thing. But what was the second ship we sent up after Apollo?
Artemis. There you go. Okay.
Who was
like,
the twin sister of Apollo? Okay. But something interesting. Let's look up her description because we just said oh, that's why I put this here. Is Artemis, the Ephesian Artemis, Pythagorean Cybele? So we heard Artemis, right? Goddess of nature, childbirth, so virgin birth, you know how they mix these things. Wildlife, the moon, cathode, Catholic. The hunt, sudden death.
Wow.
Hold up. So on one side of Baphomet's arm, we have Solve. On the other arm, the tattoo is called coagula, which means blood clot.
Coagulation, coagulate. Okay, coagula. I got that.
Uh-huh. And what's her symbols? The Roman equivalent is Diana, which was mentioned in Acts. Symbol is the bow and arrows. Nimrod was known as a great archer, a hunter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Crescent moon. What's on a lot of Islamic country flags?
That crescent moon.
And what's at the base of the Virgin Mary? Crescent moon.
Wow. Isn't that all? Isn't there a crescent moon also in the communist
flag?
Yeah, where it's got like
hammer and sickle.
Okay. I'm might be thinking of something else.
Yeah.
Actually, funny enough, I think it was in a video game. I think it was like a different faction that you could choose.
Right.
And it was like okay. Anyhow.
But again, I'm not saying everything's evil because no, God created it. But what I'm explaining for folks is the perversion aspect of how the occult thinks with these symbols and what the meaning of these things are. So I'm just throwing that out as well. So according to ancientorigins.net, every time, 5 times a day, Muslims come across the world face of the holy site of Mecca and pray, Mecca is believed to be the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad, and when followers visit the site, it is not actually Mecca they are facing, but a building called the Kaaba, or Kaaba, which is similar to a variation of Kaaba. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
much as they say we're different, there's a similar etymology connotation here. Islam, meteorite worship of the black stone. What? Islam's meteorite that they circle at the Kaaba is like the meteorite in Acts chapter 19, verses 23 through 36, 600 years earlier. It seems pagans would think the meteor was a god and start worshiping it. But when they recognized that he was a single outcry arose from them, all they that shouted in the 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." After quieting the crowd, the town clerk said, "Men of Ephesus, what man is there after all who does not know that the city of the Ephesians is guardian of the temple of great Artemis and of the image which fell from heaven, a meteor?" So, since this undeniable facts, you ought to keep calm and do nothing rash. Ibn al-Kelbi reports that Manat was a large stone in the territory of the Had-El tribe, and Alat was a rectangular stone upon which a ewe used to grind wheat, and Saad was a high block of stone in the desert. In some cases, the divinity that identified with a particular rock of natural rock. Afals was a reddish projection resembling a man on a otherwise black mountain. With specifically erected stones might also serve as dwelling places of the divinity or the seats of his power. The famous of all the stones fetishes in Arabia was, of course, the black stone in the sanctuary of Mecca. So, whether it's a mountain, whether it's a pyramid, whether it's a little cone stone, you see how they all have the same connotation and belief system connecting with meteorites and or star worship or falling from the sky. Right?
Yeah, they just keep, I mean, the similarities just, they're not stopping.
Right.
They keep coming.
Yes. They keep coming, man.
Yeah.
If I told you Christmas was celebrated by the apostles, you would chide me. Yet Islam teaches that Abram made the pilgrimage and circled the Kaaba with the black stone in it. What? Ritual retained, meaning redefined paganism, spiritualized into monotheism. And again, people are going to say this isn't true. It is true. But you see how they're trying to take, and again, another good man like King David, Star of David, and they're trying to now take Abram and say that he does this as well, which we know is a case in the Bible. He did not, because he stayed faithful to God. The only thing he might have done in contrast to God was procreate with Sarah's handmaiden. Remember that story?
Briefly, I do
Let me
remember
explain
hearing
this one,
something on
'cause
that.
this is a big one. So it's said that when Abram went to when Abram went to Egypt, that the Pharaoh started making a pass at his wife, and instead of saying, "Oh, that's my wife," he said, "Oh yeah, it's my sister," because he didn't want to cause a problem. So God was like, "No, that's not allowed." So he started making a lot of the Egyptians suffer from boils and whatnot, or some plagues, and they're like, "Okay, you're not being transparent with me. What's going on?" "It's my wife." "Okay, get out of here." Now it's alleged, this is not in the Bible, but makes sense, that the Pharaohs felt so bad that he gave one of his daughters to be the handmaiden for Sarah. The name of this particular girl? Hagar. So when Abram sleeps with this other lady and begets Ishmael, the father of Islam, you telling me that there's a potential to have another human line for a Messiah?
Interesting.
Right? It's plausible. It's plausible. But it does
Absolutely.
make you think, because if pharaohs were continuing the dynasty after Nimrod, if there has to be some sort of bloodline connotation there, and because Abram mated with Hagar, if there could be some sort of maybe there's some sort of thing in the occult version where they're looking at Christ going, no, because yes, you're part of Abram, and yes, you have all those other credentials, but you're not part of the Pharaoh line. But he comes from Egypt. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So their mind thinking, they're going, and I don't know, but I'm thinking as an Antichrist figure, they could find a plausible loophole by occult definitions of things. So, like I said, colleges, as you already noted before with me, there's a third number of the college whose name we know in addition to the two mentioned above, since it appears in an inscription, namely Verus, a basis exigua found in the Trans-Tiberum district of Rome, permits the conclusion that this Verus, priest of Sol Invictus, dedicated the figure of an eagle to his god. Eagle. What do we have
America,
as our national bird?
the bald eagle.
Right. And what do we have right between the two pillars on our Social Security?
We got that eagle.
And the two pillars of Freemasonry. So then again, Hermes, it was either a hawk, bird of prey, could be an eagle, was known to be a trickster god that would carry souls to hell occasionally. Just saying, that's on our Social Security. Like I said, with money, coinage. So the pedestal probably supported this figure, which has been lost. A dedication of this kind was normal, seeing that eagle was played a special role in the cult of dogma of Sol Invictus. Again, what country has the Statue of Liberty? Hello? Did I lose you?
Oh no, there we are. Sorry, I'm right here. My dogs were barking. My dogs were barking, but so I muted real quick. But we have the Statue of Liberty in the state of New York, in our country.
Yes, America. And so that's another
America.
little nod where I was going. Could be wrong, but where's the symbolism in American? You just said the light bearer.
Yep.
Okay, what state was it that had the 9/11 attack?
New York City, New York.
And it was known as the World Trade Centers. Hermes was known as the god of trade. Again.
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
And Trump has a variation of Hermes' name. So
that's wild.
Eudema, a freedman, showed his gratitude to Titus Julius Balbillus as his patronus optimus by an epigraph dedication. The priest, therefore, was a nonity, since he was honored as a protector. For the libertas, such as an expression of gratitude, was the occasion to commemorate his patron by all of his titles. But here, in the other surviving epigraphic text concerning him, he carries only the titles of Sacerdos Solis Elagabalus. It may therefore be concluded that Balbillus had no other important function and was fully occupied with the cult of Sol Invictus. The aforementioned Verus, who was also the Sacerdos Solis Invicti, unfortunately, no exact date can be identified, although the epigraphic text provides sufficient indications to make it likely that he was in the office during and after the reign of Elagabalus, the Syrian sun god, is referred and cannot be doubted. This inscription does not occur in the collection of the Mithraic dedications compiled by F. Cumont. Furthermore, a priest, initiate of the mysteries of the Persian Mithras cult, scarcely carried the title of Sacerdos Sol Invicti, nor can it refer to the ancient soul because his epitaph Invictus, means invincible, seems to have been in recent introduction, nor can the sun god be referred to as the soul of all regions of Reformation, of Aurelian 50 years after Elagabalus, since the servants of that cult were pontifices.
We went over that one earlier. Pontifex wasn't Pontifex? Wasn't that the name?
Pontifex, and now it's Pontifice. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's twice that we have this here. And then what does it say? Verus was also a priest of Liber Pater. Pater means father, just like we call the Pope.
Pater. And then like paternal parents. Okay.
But Dispatar,
Yep.
where we get that's where we actually get the Saint Peter thing. So that would be Nimrod incarnate. That was the Latin sky god of the underworld, where we meet Saint Peter at the pearly gates, quote unquote. I'm
Wow.
like, do you guys see how counterfeit is plastered all over Christianity? And that people are buying this, or they're saying, oh, the sins that were committed. No, because it's supposed to be per individual based thing. So people ask per individual the faith that's within you. I kind of want to understand this. And a lot of folks aren't understanding what Christianity is because they don't see that testimony emulated in their lives. Everybody looks just like the secular culture with their patriotism, with whatever, cultural things that they believe in. Nobody's abstaining from things of this world. Like with holidays, you keep partaking, you're not abstaining. Does that prompt a question? No. So on and so forth. Apply accordingly per individual. The black cube in Mecca in the occult is called the hypercube. It represents mind control. That's why the TV is black, your phone too, and cube-shaped. The graduation hat is a black cube. All mind control. When Muslims walk around it, its rings, a representation of the Saturn rings. Saturn, Satanism, is what they're giving your energy to. Same in Christianity. The cross, when it is folded up into a cube, more mind control. You see that over here?
Yeah. If you were to if you were to draw that like on a piece of paper or cardboard, cut it out, section it off, it just folds up into a cube. Wow.
Exactly. And so when people are asking me, so is the cross? I wouldn't, because what does it say in Hebrews? Is that he puts the cross before the throne of God. He conquers that symbol. Why is Christ always on a cross, depicted in death? He conquered death. So this symbol, which connects to Nimrod's son Tammuz, and it has connections with the Kaaba cube, you don't need symbols to show that you're a Christian. What do you need? You need your word. You need your actions, because what? The word became flesh. What does he do during communion? Accept of this cup. This cup is my blood. This bread is my body. Do you understand now what you're accepting here? You are becoming part of me when you are partaking of this. You are accepting this marriage cup between you and me, like we explained last time. This is what I'm talking about. So you don't need to be, because what's our God? He's not a God of symbols. The occult is. They rely on symbols. They rely on parity because they can't, in replication, because they can't create. Your creator God can. Big difference.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to say, add, or before I continue?
No. I think this is all very, very, very interesting, and I will have to say, because I've done on my end, I've done a lot of reading, and the amount of reading you have been doing,
Oh,
you're slaying it, dude. Because like, especially a lot of these words, I'm like, what is it?
I can't pronounce half of them either. I just want
Alagabullet?
to, yeah, Elagabalus.
Yeah, it's yeah. You're doing a good job, man.
I don't care about the pronunciation. I just want you to get a basic gist that it's not just
Yep.
me. It's in the history books. You can buy the thing yourself. Um, but like I said before, in Ezekiel chapter 8, where we read about this whole thing with Tammuz, and he brought me to the inner court of the temple, and behold, at the door of the temple, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple and their faces towards the east, and they worshipped the sun towards the east. Ezekiel 8:16, and they were weeping for Tammuz. And the chapter refers to a biblical prophet seeing a vision of the child of Israel worshiping a sun god, Tammuz, aka an equivalent of Horus. It could be Hermes. Again, it's all the equivalents, Nimrod's son. And again, this is the same similar logo to the Smithsonian Jesuit logo. So legions in Syria, they were very influenced when they were in this area to become followers of Sol Invictus, because it's a big empire. So again, you're in a region that's very popular by this thing, you might be drawing in some converts. And the legions that were recruited from this area, they were partly as a result of the influence of the cult of Emesa, acclaimed Elagabalus emperor. An inscription to the effect has been found in Bricatio, Pannonian Superior. Dedications and expressions of gratitude to the sun god Elagabalus were made by individuals of every class and position. The doctrine of Sol Invictus Elagabalus had now penetrated everywhere. The ritual? Emperor Elagabalus, the crowned high priest of Sol Invictus, sacrificed to the sun god every morning. During these daily rites, for which he stood in front of the altar, presumably in a particular attitude and facing a particular direction. Seeing a similarity here? The amplissimus sacerdos wore typically Syrian robes ornamented with precious stones. His face was decorated with red, and his eyes were made up, accompanied by a group of women who danced and struck music from strange instruments. He proceeded from the imperial palace of Elagabalus, around which the various altars had been placed with readiness. He made the round of the altars, performing sacred dances as he went. It may be that he himself examined the entrails of young children that had been sacrificed, for he was preeminently the sacro-cognoscens of the mysteries of Sol Invictus. It could therefore provide decisive elucidation and final pronouncement. He could function with complete assurance and as augur, since he had himself initiated into their mysteries whenever he had, can't see the rest of that, other deities transferred into Elagabalus. Women weeping for Tammuz, ladies doing dances, all facing a particular direction. There's a lot of similarities here, you know what I'm saying?
They just keep coming.
That's all I'm asking, folks, because you don't want to believe me. Remember that Cybele lady we were talking about? Let's see.
She was the queen of gods, correct?
Queen, yes, mother of the gods.
Mother of the gods.
So, blah, 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 indicate the celestial goddess from North Africa had many votaries in her places. For her followers, this goddess had a dual nature. Oh, sorry, excuse me. With the sacred dances, I was thinking of Shiva doing the cosmic dance of destruction, quote unquote. For her followers, the goddess had a dual nature. As queen of the heavens, she directed the motions of the moon and the stars. Queen of the heavens controlled thunder and lightning and sent beneficent rains down to the earth. As personification and deification of this productive natural forces, she was the goddess of fertility. As such, she was identified with Cybele in Africa and with the Bona Dea in Italy. Interesting.
And yes.
So, what do we see now in the Middle East with this particular country? Both Islam and the other one wear this, right?
Yep.
What's it called? Let's read into it. The cap of Cybele. Who? This goddess priest was connected to Blackrock, right?
Uh-huh.
The oldest and most sacred pagan religious symbols of humanity, dating back nearly 2000 BC. The skull cap was worn by the sun priests of Egypt. Halos came about with Catholicism, right? When we see the sun rays for Horus, when we're looking at Egyptian hieroglyphics, right?
Yep.
Sun god, son of God. It is a thin, slightly rounded skull cap, now commonly known by various titles, including there is a yarmulke and the kufi for Muslims. The Roman Catholic Church calls them Syncretism. Vatican Hill was the site of the largest ancient temple to Cybele. Ashtoreth, the goddess of fertility, sexuality, and war, was known as Cybele in Rome. And the Bible warns against worshiping her. Then the children of Israel did again evil in the sight of the Lord and served Baals and Ashtoreths, plurals. So I can have several variations thereof, but all tracing back to who? The Bible declares, for a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is in the image and glory of God. 1 Corinthians 11:7.
Dang.
Right? And so when we're over here, oh, silly Israel, you're always falling away. And you do the same thing every time December 25th rolls around. They had groves unto Ashtoreth and Baal. What do we have for prepping for Christmas all year long? We're growing little groves for celebration. For who? Oh, well, I don't do it for those reasons. What?
Are you sure?
Right. Abstain from all appearances of evil. So don't tell me you bash Hollywood when you do the same thing, because the tree represents immortality, everlasting life. Isn't that funny that Christ did the same thing, but this tree connects with his doppelganger? And you're saying I don't worship him, but that's also his birthday? Come on, people. The pomegranate is the tree of knowledge in some myths. In others, it is linked to the underworld, as in the Greek story of Persephone, which lies at the center of the Eleusinian mysteries. Persephone is taken to the underworld by Hades to be his queen. She willingly eats a seed of pomegranate and is forced to spend an entire winter with her husband in the land of the dead, symbolizing the yearly decay and the revival of vegetation. This seasonal myth is also found in the Syrian tale of Ashtoreth, Aphrodite, Ashtoreth, and Adonis, which Trump has a variation of this name. Donald comes from Adonis. Adonis's equivalent is Dumazid, a Sumerian goat shepherd god. Dumazid's equivalent is Nimrod's son Tammuz. The Phrygian Mithra followers used to wear red Phrygian hats. The Phrygian versions feature Cybele and Attis. Attis is an equivalent of Tammuz. And in Egypt, where we hear of Isis and Osiris. Nimrod, Mommy. Siri. Hey, Siri. Series.
Right there. It's right there.
Oh, Siri. Yes. Our present heroes descend into the underworld in the Persian version of the same story. So the three pomegranates of our tale are becoming ripe with the turn into the three princes. This is somewhere in India. In Judaism, the number of seeds in the pomegranate is said to be the exact number of the mitzvah, a spiritual duties required to devout you, tree worship, not ethnicity, always going after the ideology. In Sufism, which is basically an Islam equivalent of Freemasonry, the pomegranate is also a symbol as well. The Sufi saint Ali said, "The light of Allah is in the heart of whoever eats pomegranates." And the Prophet Muhammad said, "The pomegranate cleanses you of Satan and from evil aspirations for 40 days. Again, I find it interesting that it always interconnects with all of these things, whether it's Catholicism, whether it's Islam, whether it's the ancient Roman texts. It's all interconnective.
I find it interesting too, real quick, that like in the Bible, like when we're talking like the Garden of Eden and the forbidden fruit, I know there's been like a lot of like talk, like was it an apple? Because that's how it's kind of portrayed. But there's a lot of people that do believe it was closer to a pomegranate.
Well, the reason the apple came about is when you cut an apple at its equator, it looks like the 5 points of a pentagram.
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. So again, that's according to lore. Whether it's true or not, I'm just giving a little nod to that. But like I said in the beginning, Smithsonian, Jesuits, where we get the father of Big Bang, where they're hiding a whole bunch of history under the Vatican and at the Smithsonian. So we can't find the cryptid bodies of these fallen Nephilim and all of their cryptids descendants. I don't know, but look at the logo. Who do they sound like they're loyal to? Christ? No, because you want the lie that you want to, the lie you want to push, the counterfeit you want to push, that's who you're loyal to. And as I've said to folks, Baphomet, it's not necessarily Satan. The reason I say that, look, you see it here. That's his manhood. And you see Hermes carry it. You see his Egyptian equivalent carry it. We see it on our medical 911, right?
Yep.
Not a coincidence. It's similar to the staff of Asclepius for the WHO, the World Health Organization, right? And what did I tell you earlier? What's this covering?
That is covering the map that you had brought up that had the 33 different quadrants.
Let's cut this off and cut off the very bottom of the staff. What would that be? Cut off the very bottom. That little squiggle with the line through it.
I'm squinting here to see
Money.
this.
$.
Money, 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 money. And then we went back to the minted coins.
Yes.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
So materialism, and this would basically be Satan's avatar, and this is in the Vatican when you look at the other side of the room. So yes, is it say yes, but he has to have a vessel, right? And it says there's 5 beasts in Revelation, and he gives power unto one of them. So, like I said before, the waters of heaven, which makes more sense to me, is that you're going up towards God, like the Ark of the Covenant. What does that do? That secures the believers, because when the temple veil rips in two, the presence of God now indwells the bodies of the saints. Greater is he that is within you than he that is of the world. Know ye not, your body is a temple of the Lord. So what? Just like with Noah, you end up coming up to God, and around the presence of God is the throne room, which looks like a rainbow. Van Allen's belt is what some people have referred to it as.
Yep.
So you're secured, and just like with baptism, what does that do? That lets you cross the firmament into the celestial heaven, because you're letting the old man die to self down here. You are protected within the new ark, the covenant of being indwelled as God's.
Ark of the Covenant.
Right. And in contrast with Sol Invictus and everything like that, soul, S-O-L, soul, your soul. You see how they work the etymology in there?
Yeah, there's a lot of trickery. A lot of trickery, but it also yeah, I'm trying to figure out my words right now, but to say the least, a lot of trickery with the wordplay here.
Yes. You know, I think we'll end in 3 slides if that's okay. We'll end here today.
That's good. Yep,
Okay.
that works.
So the original Great White Brotherhood, this is taken from Gary Wayne's book, the very first one, the Genesis 6 Conspiracy. And like I said, huge respect for Gary, but there's one thing then contrast where I've connected Hermes to be Nimrod's son. But he writes this, if people are always wondering with the Nimrod equation with all of this. How then did Nimrod receive the secret sciences of the Enochian religion from the antediluvian world? How did Nimrod utilize the knowledge of the corrupted 7 sciences and the vile pantheistic religions from the antediluvian world? Hermes, Tammuz, of course, discovered and translated the degenerate data from the Enoch's hieroglyphics. And this is evil Enoch, not the one that walked with God, where we get the oral version written down of the book of Enoch. Which was etched into the Twin Towers. And I'm like, dude, did you reread that? This is why, again, when you're listening to Tinfoil Hat or Babylon Falls in an Hour, folks want to look up that episode. This is why I highly suspect that that was coronation day for an antichrist, because we have this little thing with Twin Towers, right? There's got to be a connotation. And who? Hermes. So, and again, like the days of Noah, and that just happened how many years? 23 years ago? So we're very, very close. Constructed by Lamech's children. All the reprehensible evils Noah witnessed before the flood then came back to haunt Noah in his later years. The twin evils of the spurious knowledge of the Nephilim, the giants, both fell into the hands of the tyrant of Shinar and the detriment of the post-Diluvian society. The impact of the forbidden knowledge did not remain inert. Nimrod reactivated the corrupt knowledge with all of his heart and with all of his soul. This is why, in Genesis 10, recorded that anything that humankind could conceive was then obtainable. Even though the people of Shinar did not possess the heavenly wisdom to apply this spurious knowledge not only to the good of humankind, the 7 spurious sciences are purportedly so powerful that anything is possible through their application. To this end, craft legends recorded that Nimrod was a mason who loved the spurious sciences, and Nimrod was captivated with aggression stemming from his newly found power. He is celebrated as a great mason. And I find this interesting that it's this shade, which is the same shade as the Statue of Liberty, which is the same shade as our money, very similar with green, you know? Where do we get
Absolutely.
And this all-seeing eye similar turquoise-like color, is atop of the Israeli Supreme Court.
Dang. Yeah, that's wild, man, with the emerald. Yeah, that's a crazy connection right there. That is a crazy connection. And then the Twin Towers, obviously, 9/11, and then I know you also connect that to Trump, but then you have the two towers of Freemasonry.
Because
And
when you go
wow.
through them, and then the third tower, that's the ascension of humanity, wisdom, enlightenment, call it harmony. So I was over here like, that's all very interesting because we never talk about the third tower, but that was the third thing to fall. Not the first, it's the first two, but then that was the third, you know?
Okay.
Freemasonry has 33 degrees because they worship the fallen watcher's alchemy. Excuse me. Knowledge that Tammuz or Hermes translated here. Mount Hermon coordinates, 33-degree parallel. Mount Hermon in Hebrew means forbidden and or cursed. Hermes derives his name from Mount Hermon. Hermaphrodite as well. The emerald tablets were translated from the events that transpired here. Baal, bell worship, ring a bell every hour upon the hour, like Horus, which they say it's not, you look it up, but they said it connects with the equinox and it's probably from the northern tribes that got it from Rome and blah, 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 blah. And I was saying, well, then it would connect to sun because, and again, you look at your clock, 12 from 6, 6, 1 from 7, 6, 2 from 8, 6, 3 from 9, 6. You go all the way around your clock, 6, 6, 6.
Yep.
So, world's tallest United Nations base is atop of Mount Hermon, and it has a star of chaos in front. Why is that significant to them?
Oh, that looks like the two why am I drawing a blank? The Smithsonian kind of has
Yes.
that it kind of has, and then the Jesuits that kind of also has. Yep, Jesuits and the Smithsonian. Boom,
Mm-hmm.
right there.
That's what I'm saying. And again, I can skimp over this, but I'll just read this part mainly and a little bit over here. A cornerstone of the tenets of alchemy, Smardinian tablets, otherwise known as the Emerald, the Secrets of Hermes, is an ancient text who said that Hermes Trismegistus, the founder of all things alchemical, the legend goes that Alexander the Great found the tablet of the tomb of Hermes, inscribed on it the Phoenician characters. Remember, we just connected that with Cybele and all those ones over there.
Yep.
Were the instructions for making gold. The tomb is reputed to have been near Hebron, and the earliest translations of this mysterious recipe are in Arabic. Now, it had Roger Bacon, Albertus Magnus, Carl Jung, all guys who were dabbling in it. Isaac Newton, who thought consuming lead would give him immortality. When they exhumed his body, they found a whole bunch of that in his body as well as in his hair for consumption. And there's one phrase he writes particularly in here is the sun is father, the moon is mother, and the father of all perfection in the whole world is here. You just said you're God, Mr. Hermes? What I found significant, what I just said over here, the tomb is reputed to have been near Hebron. Again, what's the Bible? Biblical tradition holds that the patriarchs of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, along with their wives Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah, were buried in the cave. Hebron is also recognized in the Bible as the place where David was anointed the king of Israel following the Babylonian captivity at Edomites settled in Hebron.
Dang.
You don't think it's a coincidence that God knows what he's doing with geography, with countering what the occult is doing with history? Of course there is.
That is well said, and that is such a great question to pose. You don't think that God's got this kind of figured out, kind of, sort of, maybe kind of
Oh,
already
he's figured
knew.
out. He's just playing a mind game with them, going, "What's he do? He's not supposed to show up till the time of the end. What's going on here? You know what I'm saying? They
Yep.
don't get it because, like I said before, you never know the mind of God. That is blasphemy. But you can know His heart when you accept His Son. Thy word I have hidden in my heart. Right?
Yep.
If you seek God, you will not want to offend God. But again, you'll never know the mind. But ultimately, what are they going? The angels are always in awe and wonder of everything that God does. So what they have is ultimately going to the occult, going, we have a rough blueprint, but we really have no idea what's going on. But don't tell them that. Don't tell them that. They think we're gods. Okay, so what you want to do is, that's the lie that they all gravitate towards. In contrast, what we get, they believe regeneration, reincarnation, and ascending to become like stars, like the gods. Angels were known as star walkers, Starlink. Ultimately, what is Christ offering in exchange? No. Resurrection, rebirth, die to self daily. It's a spiritual thing. And we'll close with this, but pointing, remember we always hear the phrase, as above, so below,
So,
right?
yep.
Oh, that's just Satan. Okay. As above, so below, as within, so without, so in the universe, so the soul. Take out the U. Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes, the other guy that I showed you over here. Not
With
Baphomet.
the emerald tablet, and you know what I just noticed is, like, from the emerald tablet, if you look behind Hermes, like, it's got that emerald color in the back behind him.
Yes.
The dollar bill that you mentioned, the Statue of Liberty that you have mentioned,
Yes.
holding that staff with the two serpents, the one that we see in pharmaceutical companies, maybe or maybe not on an ambulance,
Yeah.
and then it's bearing light at the top, which is also what is
All
being
seeing eye.
held by this. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And you see it. You see it. And that's what I'm saying is, so like I said, he says the father of all perfection is here. Like you just said, the all seeing eye. It could be a pine cone as well. Pine cones used to be given out before Valentine's Day for hearts because it symbolized purification. It was like a, heart and you were the sun to my moon, all that stuff. Similar to the yoga pose as you see here. And what is it ultimately, folks, when you say as above, so below? Conjoined is as above, so below. We have our own elements, dear God. We know how to achieve our own godhood without you. Transhumanism, hello. In your face, God, we are divine. That is what this star Remphan is equaling, 666. 6 electrons, 6 neurons, 6 protons. We don't need you, Creator God. We can do it on our own. That is the number of the beast, is loving the elements more than your Creator God.
That
So,
is so wild. Like, what's really wild to me is that the fire, air, water, and earth. I did not know that if you draw them all over the top of it, you overlay everything, it makes a pentagram. I did not know that at all. And funny enough, I recently got a tattoo gun, and I've been kind of playing around with different designs and just practicing, you know. And I was looking up elements the other day, and I was like, that looks cool. That looks cool. And I'm not even kidding you, Brandon. I'm like, my luck, I'm gonna tattoo a couple of these things on my body, not realizing
just
what
run
they
them by me.
actually mean. Seriously, I'm talking like literally like maybe I think it actually, and when I was thinking about doing like the element stuff, I think it was we met up on a Friday. I think it was either that night or the next day on Saturday. And I just had a weird feeling like, just do your research before you do something stupid, Kyle. And I didn't do my research at all. However, we are now sitting across from each other doing this beautiful podcast. And now I'm like, oh man, that's just weird. I don't got the heebie jeebies, but I just got like this weird sense of like a light bulb turning on sort of kind of thing.
Well, you don't have to mark your body at all, man. Like I said, so we don't rely on symbols as Christians, but that's just my comment.
True, Brandon. I'm a little late on that one, my dude. I have far too many tattoos. Yeah, everywhere. But now it's and but it's good to know. It's good to know, and I definitely learned a lot. This one really blew my mind. Like the part one was great, and it was like a nice introductory, like dipping my
Yeah,
feet in the water a little bit. And this one was like, oh, boom! Like the way you had it laid out was perfect.
thanks.
For someone like me that is learning the Bible. I'm trying to understand the Bible. I'm trying to dissect it in a way that I can understand it. And so the way that this presentation has been laid out has been like very eye-opening to me, and I cannot thank you enough. And it looks like this is probably possibly going to be a part 3, part 4.
It's looking
And
like it.
and I think that's cool though. Unfortunately, like this is like the only times that I can actually start. So I appreciate you kind of adjusting your schedule to making this happen. I really do appreciate it. But in the same breath, like I do know there's a possibility of, people might get a little lost between part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, depending on how long that does go. I think we can probably do it in part 4 parts, but I do think it's important for the listeners to slowly digest some of this, because it is a lot.
Them,
Unless
yeah.
Some of them, and I agree with you, some of them, because I'm speaking on my level, which I'm on a
Right.
lower level of understanding. So other people, they could probably hit this podcast and put it in like 1.5 speed and just be like, okay, boom, 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 boom.
Get the highlights.
Anyhow, yeah, man. Thank you so much, Brandon. You're awesome, man. You're awesome.
Yeah, if folks want to find anything more, Mana Daily Podcast on Rumble and YouTube, and I'm opening to Spotify gradually. So, and then Krollology 101 for Instagram, if you can find me, like my name on the screen, ology _101. Thanks for having me back on, man. I hope to do the part 3 and 4. As I said, I think you're right. Some folks need it a little bit more cut up, like an elephant, dice by dice. So maybe doing it in parts is easier to digest.
Well, I guess we'll kind of let the comments speak for that. Because if we do part 3 and they're like, no, man, like, or after this goes and there's like, let's just wrap this up in one more, I will get off work early on a Friday and we will make this happen. And I'll get off, and if we got to do 3-4 hours, I'm in. Sign me up.
That's awesome. Okay.
But I guess, yeah, with that being said, Brandon, thank you. Go check out Brandon Kroll. He just went ahead and stated all of his, where you can find him. Stay tuned. I do know for at least my guest, if you don't already know, he just recently he's appeared on, first of all, many awesome podcasts. But I think the most recent one was Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli. So go check that one out. That's kind of a big deal. It's a pretty big deal, man. And I think you've researched your way, you've worked hard, and if there's anyone that deserves these awesome opportunities, man, again, based on everything you have done to get there, it's you, my dude. It's you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a beautiful episode. Definitely stay tuned for the next part or 2 parts, and go check out the Mana Daily podcast with yours truly, Brandon Kroll. And thank you all so very much. I hope you guys have a blessed night. And as I always say, I try to remember as wrapping up this show, stay fly and be kind, folks. Stay fly and be kind. That's a wrap. Thank you all. Bye.